Fighting games were a huge part of my gaming time during the 5th generation of consoles. It really was the first time home versions started to actually look like their arcade counterparts on a much grander scale. All of a sudden, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and many others could stand toe-to-toe visually with their more expensive cousins. It was also the dawn of the home 3D polygon fighter, a new take on the genre that brought different mechanics and visuals to the table. Many have claimed the Saturn is the best Sega console for fighting games, besting even the mighty Dreamcast in this regard. I'll take on that topic in my very next episode, but for now, as promised, it's time to take a look at my favorite Sega Saturn fighting games. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. There are games in the Fatal Fury series that I love, and there are games that I despise. Fortunately, Real Bout Garou Densetsu Special is one I happen to love. Using the extended RAM cartridge, it does a very good job of recreating the original Neo Geo version, sans some moderate load times that do little to diminish the appeal. There's a lot here to like, starting with the varied cast of 20 plus fighters, some of the best gameplay the series has ever seen, and visuals that excelled in both sprite and background design. To add to that appeal, SNK even added a full English mode to the options, allowing you to have the full story at a time when Japanese imports rarely afforded such luxuries. Fans of the multi-plane system of fighting will appreciate its return here, as it's the fastest and easiest to use in the series. Most people pass this up thinking it's a mere upgrade to Real Bout, but it's actually so much more. It's got new fighters, new music, new stages, and tweaks to the gameplay that make an already good game even better. The Saturn version even has an original mode where the CPU randomly challenges you like an arcade experience. This was SNK's answer to Capcom's Street Fighter Zero series, and it's damn near just as good. When the original Virtua Fighter landed on the Sega Saturn, I was enamored with its great gameplay. There's no doubt though that there were some bad optics there. Sega was quick to remedy the poor visuals with Virtua Fighter Remix here, and they succeeded on pretty much every level. Gone are the glitchy, flat-shaded polygons of that game, now replaced with glorious textured mapped graphics that run so much better. The gameplay, which was already pretty damn good before, is still intact and just as strong, making this version the version Sega should have done in the first place. The only thing I feel Sega kinda skimped on here was a chance to remix the soundtrack, and maybe add an additional mode or two to flesh out the replay value. This was a heck of a game though, particularly since at the time of its release, there still wasn't a lot out for the Saturn even in Japan. This one was surpassed by other 3D fighters later on, but it still holds a lot of replay value with me thanks to its slower and technically minded gameplay. The Sega Saturn also remains the only console capable of playing it, though there is an ancient PC release if you can get it running.
1, ready, go!
A lot of you out there assume that you can skip X-Men Children of the Atom because you can score X-Men vs Street Fighter on the same system. I mean, they both play the same, right? Not at all, in fact. While this is definitely the genesis of what would become Capcom's Versus series, there is still quite a different feel to this gameplay. But what really draws me to this is the extreme difficulty of its AI. While most Capcom fighters take it easy on you at lower levels, this game remains tough no matter the setting. And the final boss Magneto is a beast to all but the most seasoned veteran. While the animation has definitely seen cutbacks across the board, the visuals still remain impressive with great color, detailed backgrounds, and huge sprites. This was released well before the extended RAM cartridges showed up, so this is the base Saturn hardware all alone running it. It's still an A+ effort and plays great, earning its spot in my top 10 quite easily.
Tornado claw. Tornado claw. Real claw. Tornado claw. Up the glass. You win.
Fighter's Megamix here might as well be called Fighting Viper's Remix, because that's exactly what you get. This is mainly the Fighting Viper style of play with warriors from other Sega games like Virtua Fighter, Virtua Cop, Rena-Hero, Sonic the Fighters, and even Daytona USA. The structure was really unique among Sega fighting games, which at the time were almost exclusively vanilla ports of their arcade offerings. Yet Fighter's Megamix was a mix of different games, different styles of play, and it was loaded with unlockable fighters. The graphics engine that powered this was like Fighting Vipers as well, and included caged arenas you could smash through, as well as infinite playing areas that offered endless room to fight in. The different paths you could take were cool too, basically allowing you to choose who or what you did battle with. Of all the games that started life on the Sega Saturn, this is the one I really wish that they had continued. Just imagine if this type of game had been allowed to mature over the course of years, and imagine the cast of Sega characters it could have by now. It was a missed opportunity to grow such an excellent stable of gameplay options, and the Saturn remains the only way to play it. I was always a big fan of the Vampire series of games. The Saturn saw two of them, Vampire Hunter and Vampire Savior. Both were good games, but Vampire Savior here was an absolute beast of a fighting experience. Based on the arcade version of the same name, this uses the 4MB extended RAM cartridge to bring us a near perfect home port. It has all of the fighters from the previous games and introduces a few changes to the gameplay, such as life bars not being replenished in between rounds, and some changes to the way your super gauge can be used. From the perspective of art design and the various forms of gameplay each fighter is capable of, it could be easily argued this is one of the best fighting games on the platform. It's an absolutely gorgeous experience visually, and it has a fitting and well-composed soundtrack to round out that excellent presentation. It has a few of the things that they added to Vampire Savior 2, such as the addition of a few fighters not in the original arcade. It's one of the Saturn's better 2D games, and really does stand toe-to-toe with the arcade original in nearly every way. Sunsoft was known for some pretty wacky fighting games in their day, and you won't find anything more unique than Astra Superstars. Part Street Fighter, part Dragon Ball Z, and part Waku Waku 7, it's a bright, colorful, and incredibly frantic fighting game that assaults both your eyes and ears as soon as the round starts. The pace of this one can be off-putting in the beginning. It's just so fast, and the combo system is so easy to score major damage. The super meter also builds really fast, meaning that it's not unusual to see half a dozen or more star specials in a single round. Once you adjust to the breakneck pace, however, you'll find an extremely satisfying fighter here. It's animated up there with some of the best of the era thanks to the inclusion of RAM expansion support, and the full screen specials never fail to impress. This is criminally underrated in the fight community, I feel. No doubt a result of its Saturn exclusivity all these years. It's based on the version that came to the Saturn's arcade variant, the STV Titan board, both of which only saw a release in Japan.
Fight!
The Sega Saturn was blessed with no less than 4 different versions of the Street Fighter Alpha series. While the first one was really good, Part 2 was a bona fide masterpiece, even more so when you consider its update, Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, which was called Street Fighter 02 Dash in Japan. It was first available in the compilation called Street Fighter Collection, which also came with Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. It included a number of enhancements, including unlocked fighters available in the main roster, as well as a few new hidden ones. The most prolific addition here, however, is the new Akuma, or Goki mode, a vicious version of Shin Akuma that cancels his own animations to absolutely nasty effect. This guy is fast, exact, and one of the hardest AI routines Capcom has ever designed. It will challenge all but the most dedicated Street Fighter fans, and adds a ton of replay value to the arcade and versus modes. Outside of that, this is still the same great game it always was, impeccably animated, and it plays stellar. The 2 Super Street Fighter games were bonuses here that made the entire package one of the better values on the platform. It did see a standalone release in Japan in Saturn's Satakore value lineup a while later. There are few games on the Saturn that command the respect that Virtua Fighter 2 does. Not only because it was a very good fighting game, but also because it's among the first of what I call the showpiece titles, or software that finally showed off that when the Saturn was used properly, it could pump out some pretty impressive polygon visuals. This was a major increase in the visual appeal from the first Virtua Fighter. The color, the performance, and the texture mapping all were orders of magnitude above its predecessor. Best part was that the gameplay made the transition from the arcade intact and as strong as ever. It's lightning fast and equally as responsive. It's got the 2.1 update built in as well that tweaks the gameplay a tad if you keep up with that sort of thing. The remixed soundtrack adds even more reasons to love this title. Its only weakness is the lack of additional modes, but considering how good the core gameplay is, that's a small concern. Few fighters would ever reach its level of graphics, sound, and gameplay on this platform, and it deserves to be in contention for any conversation about the system's very best games. During the life of the Saturn, Capcom's Versus series was born, and lucky for us, we got 2 very good ports of it at the time. My personal choice of these is Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. This tag team based fighter is a mix of combatants from the 2 universes in its title. You get to choose characters like Akuma, Ryu, Chun-Li, and M. Bison from Capcom, and Captain America, Hulk, Spider-Man, and Wolverine from Marvel. The action that ensues is frantic and combo heavy, and there are numerous specials, super combos, and team-up moves that round out the available arsenal. For those of you partial to X-Men vs. Street Fighter, no worries. I consider the 2 interchangeable in this slot for a number of reasons. Gameplay-wise, they are extremely similar outside of some roster changes and the newly implemented variable assist moves, which are essentially just surprise attacks from your off-screen teammates. Outside of that, it's down to just preference really, as they are both exceptionally fun games. They employ the Saturn's 4MB RAM expansion cartridge to show off the arcade's silky smooth animation. The presentation is impeccable, the gameplay fun, and it's one of those games the poor PlayStation never had a prayer of reproducing faithfully.
Shield slash! Shield slash! Starman strikes! Shield slash! Shield slash! Hyper stars and strikes! KO! Captain America! Good work!
The Saturn version of Street Fighter 03 is special for a number of reasons. It was released after the PlayStation and Dreamcast ports for one, all the way in August of 1999, well after the platform's demise in the West. Second, it upgrades the dramatic battle option in significant ways. Not only are you able to choose any fighter you want, but you also get the vicious reverse dramatic battle, which pits you against two CPU-controlled opponents. Even the Dreamcast version lacked this, and it makes a huge difference if you're a fan of handicap matches and fighting games. The base game is exceptional as well. The mandatory use of the 4MB RAM expansion cartridge means that it has more animation than the PlayStation version, and easily rivals the arcade and Dreamcast editions. The differences in resolution also means the Saturn sprites appear larger than any other home versions as well, something my eyes always appreciated. The gameplay retains all the action you expect, and the roster of fighters is among the best in the series. There's no silly updates and seasons you need to pay extra for here. These guys were all on the disc day one for your enjoyment. Add up the World Tour mode, the Versus options, the arcade mode, the team battles, the survival modes, the final battle, and the dramatic battle options, and it really is one of Capcom's best games that generation, if not ever. The Saturn version of course never left Japan, and only the much later PSP version even comes close to matching everything it has to offer.
You win!
When looking at the overall Saturn fighting game library, it really is impossible to overlook the importance of Capcom. They contributed so much to the genre on the Saturn, and it really was the place to be if these games meant something to you back then. Outside of a few instances, many of these 2D games were almost always better on the Saturn in some way, and when the 4MB RAM expansion came into play, there could be significant and unmistakable differences that easily handed the Saturn a victory. Most of the 3D fighting games that landed on the Saturn were platform exclusive and couldn't be played on any other home console back then. So if you liked Sega's style of gameplay, titles like Virtua Fighter, Virtua Fighter 2, Fighting Vipers, and Last Bronx were big winners for you. Even the Mortal Kombat games showed up 3 times on the Saturn, and while I feel each one of them should have been better, they no doubt have a large following of fans willing to go to bat for them. All that means is that the next episode is going to be tough choosing which Sega system had the best fighting games overall. There is certainly a case for both of these machines to win, and I look forward to sharing my opinions on it. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.